The Rite stars Colin O'Donoghue, Anthony Hopkins, Alice Braga, Ciaran Hinds, Toby Jones, and Rutger Hauer. Love that guy. It was directed by Mikael Hafstrom and released in 2011. Now, the opening text states that this movie was inspired by actual events. Well, this movie was based off a book, The Making of a Modern Exorcist, by Matt Beglio. So that's more akin to I knew a guy who tripped over a possessed priest, so take it for what it's worth. When it was released, it was met with some pretty mixed reviews. But for me, this movie is somewhat of an uncut gem. One of my biggest challenges is I immediately want to compare a movie like this to The Exorcist. That movie is the bar setter for me. But you know what? This movie is better than you might think. Let me explain why. Spoiler warnings. There will be spoilers. This is the type of horror movie that really makes my skin crawl. I like slasher movies, sure, but with slashers, there's usually something a character can do to at least try and defend themselves. A bat, a knife, a gun, or some trumped-up Scooby-Doo type contraption. But with this kind of horror, if it's done right, it makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. You're not dealing with some sort of psycho or monster. It's an intangible evil so great you can almost taste it. The kind of evil that if I was to be placed in the character's shoes, I wouldn't have a clue what to do or how to stop it. This is the kind of horror movie I really enjoy, which is why, when watching it, admittedly, I have a more forgiving filter. Unless it's complete garbage, then all bets are off. Let's get into it. Michael Kovac is working as a mortician in his father's funeral home. He's expected to either take over the family business or join the church as a priest. Although Michael has a lack of faith, he decides to enter a seminary, and if after 4 years he still feels the same, he will renounce his vows and resign. At the completion of his studies, and still suffering from a lack of faith, he does in fact send off a letter of resignation. During a freak accident, he reluctantly gives the last rites to a woman struck by a car, which is witnessed by Father Matthews. Father Matthews, seeing the potential in Michael, strong-arms him into going to Rome and taking an exorcism class, or the church might convert his scholarship to a student loan and he'll be liable to pay back $100,000 worth of studies. He agrees that, if after taking the course Michael still feels the same, they can talk about his resignation. The first act here is what gives me the biggest trouble with this movie. It's competently acted and shot, but it's slow out of the gate and the pace remains painfully slow. We do get some character development. Michael, as a child, witnesses his father tending the body of his mother who had just passed, and it seems to have set up an unspoken resentment for Michael towards his father. Points that do get revisited later on in the movie, but this act is a struggle to get through. In Italy, Michael begins to study under Father Xavier, accompanied by a reporter, Angela, who has taken the course to write a story on the church's resurgence in the interest of exorcisms. Michael is often offering up scientific explanations for many of the case studies being taught, and it quickly becomes clear to Father Xavier that Michael doesn't believe in exorcisms, or the existence of God and the devil for that matter. He's sent to visit Father Lucas, a priest who has the most experience with exorcisms, and is quickly brought to aid a troubled, pregnant, young 16-year-old. This is where the story finally gains momentum. The possessions are subtle at first, but starts to become disturbing at an accelerated rate. Michael tries to explain away everything he sees scientifically, but as the events become more and more demonic, he simply turns a blind eye to it. For example, a subject who can suddenly speak another language without prior knowledge, or the fact that they know how he truly feels about his father. Where Anthony Hopkins' character is played as being somewhat eccentric. I have a hard time understanding whether or not he's absent-minded or simply doesn't care for the people who are helping him. You're about to go face-to-face with Satan himself. Don't look him in the eyes. Good luck. What? Through the course of the girl's treatment, she attempts to drown herself and is hospitalized. While under restraints and some more demonic banter, she and the baby dies, leaving Father Lucas feeling as if he had failed her. It's not long after this point where Father Lucas starts to behave strangely. There's small changes in behavior at first that are missed, but become more demonic in nature, forcing Mikael and Angela to attempt to perform an exorcism on him. This is where Anthony Hopkins shines. His performance is creepy as hell, and I found it quite unnerving. I'm happy to report that this movie still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stick out. The sets and locations were high quality, and the special effects were well done. My biggest issue is the pacing in the first half of this movie. It takes its time to get rolling, but once it did, I found it quite satisfying. If you enjoy this type of horror movie, I would definitely recommend you give it a watch. If you enjoyed this review, please consider checking the like button and clicking subscribe. It would really help me out. I'd like to thank you for sharing your time with me today on this review of The Rite. Stay tuned for more reviews to come. Take care.